Recording live in the lucky number 7 lounge in the basement of Dine Drink Travel World Headquarters in the barren wastelands of far west Texas. This is Dine Drink Vegas, the podcast by and for people who are stuck at home, but who would rather be in the land of neon lights and bad decisions. I'm your host, John, also known as the Baller on a Budget, and in episode number 10, we're going to get with the weather, preview our drink of the day, and talk about some news and our upcoming Labor Day trip. And now, it's time to welcome in the founder of Dine Drink Travel, the leader in the luxury lounge, the king of comps, the high roller of the high plains, the man who will very soon be waiting on the limo to carry him away to his luxury resort. It's Bill. Come on in and say howdy, Bill.
Hey, John. How are you today?
I'm doing better than the weather on the West Coast.
Yeah, so that is what is really weird to me. A hurricane is, as we speak, crossing land. We're recording this on Sunday, August the 20th of 2023. And as we do that, a hurricane is crossing into land in Southern California. The bands of rain are already hitting Las Vegas. And folks, if you had Hurricane Hits Las Vegas on your 2023 bingo card, I'm going to call BS because I think you're just now making that up. But that then begs the question, John, what is our drink of the day?
Well, obviously, our drink of the day has to be a hurricane. Now, the hurricane is not a cocktail one normally associates with Sin City of the West Coast. Rather, it is a favorite of the other big American party city, New Orleans, Louisiana. Originally invented in the 1940s at the famous Pat O'Brien's piano bar. It consists of 2 ounces of light rum, 2 ounces of dark rum, 1 ounce of lime juice, 1 ounce of orange juice, half an ounce of passion puree, half an ounce of simple syrup, a teaspoon of grenadine, and garnished with an orange wheel and a cherry. So it will get you drunk and give you diabetes all at once.
And it does very much taste like the diabetes. But to me, it tastes much more like regret and bad decisions. Because I know, John, that up until this exact moment in our relationship, you have always thought of me as a paragon of virtue and excellent decision-making skills. But it turns out there was one brief evening a very long time ago when that wasn't true. I was in New Orleans for a conference, and a fellow student in my program was also there with me. I have now been married to said student for, actually I should know the answer to how long we've been married. 21 years now. Cool. 21 years. But at that point we weren't even dating yet. Hurricanes may have happened, and I am shocked she didn't break up with me before we ever started dating, because it turns out that when I have hurricanes, you know, I'm not proud of the choices I made. How long ago was that? 23 years ago now? Something like that. So yeah, this tastes to me like regret from grad school. What does it taste like to you?
So back in the days when Hurricane Hillary was our first lady, my buddy Robert and I made a trip to New Orleans, and we were at the old Opera House on Bourbon Street. And they were running a 2-for-1 special on hurricanes, and there was a blues band playing. And Southern Comfort had dropped a product called Southern Comfort 101, which is a 101 proof version of Southern Comfort, which is a bourbon-based liqueur that is way sweeter than it should be. And the very attractive shot girl that they paid for to advertise this product decided that she liked my buddy Robert and I. Now, it's clearly not because we were good looking or had money. Because
we've all got faces made for radio.
But I guess we were funny. So they were running the 2-for-1 special, and every time we ordered a round, she made sure we got a shot of that Southern Comfort. But Robert and I, being the not moderators that we were at the time, we weren't ordering a hurricane and getting the free hurricane so that we each had a hurricane. Nay. We both ordered a hurricane, meaning that every round that came to the table, we had 4 hurricanes and 2 shots of Southern Comfort 101.
How are you still alive?
I don't know, because we got, I want to say, about 8 rounds into the night, and we had sang along with the band, and we finally ran out of money. And we went stumbling down Bourbon Street, and my buddy Robert face planted into the side of the horse of a mounted police officer, which led to my buddy being on the street, on Bourbon Street. And the cop and the horse both look at me, and the cop tells me, I think it was the cop, it might have been the horse, the night's a little fuzzy. The cop tells me to get him to the hotel room, which I did, and I'm pretty sure they never got the hurricane stains out of the carpet at the Royal Sonesta. So, yeah, the hurricane, like, that is my memory of a hurricane, which is why I have maybe a 3-ounce pour of this cocktail, because it's one of those alcohols that I really don't want to have a lot of, because it is associated with a very fun but very painful evening in my life.
It was, oh wow. So if they've caused both of us to make bad decisions, at least we can count on this being really good for our blood sugar levels, right?
Exactly. Yeah, this is pretty much diabetes and liver failure in a glass. It's strong. It is a delicious drink, and when you make it the right way, especially because there's all kinds of versions of the Hurricane which are a much more atomic color and have even more sugar than this does.
No, and we made it according to Hoyle. Like, we followed the recipe from Pat O'Brien.
Yeah, and it's lovely. And honestly, like, to me, you know, it's not a tiki drink. It comes from New Orleans. It doesn't come from the West Coast culture. But honestly, if you threw some bitters in this and put it in a tiki glass, like, it's that sort of thing. It belongs up there with like the Mai Tai and the Suffering Bastard, those sorts of tiki era drinks. And it tastes great, but it's the kind of thing that I do not want a lot of these days, partially for health decisions and partially because hopefully I make better and more modest decisions than 20-something me did. Although I don't know that we can blame the hurricane. Each of us had our separate experiences in New Orleans when we were in our 20s. I think just being that age in New Orleans invites bad decisions. We could have drank.
Should we make this podcast about New Orleans instead of about Las Vegas?
We're going to move on, but since we brought up hurricanes, right?
It was not a good era of our lives. So, Las Vegas, we hope everybody is safe. We hope you are okay, and this hurricane is to you. Let's go ahead and move on to the news of the day, John. What do we actually know about the status of Hurricane Hillary?
So, we do know that Clark County has declared a state of emergency so that they can mobilize resources. Although, interestingly, as of today, Clark County schools have said they still plan on having school tomorrow. We'll see whether that holds up. I don't know if the amount of rain they've been expecting has actually materialized yet. Out at Lake Mead, the dock at the marina has started to come apart, which is sending boats hither and yon and damaging craft, and so the winds and at least enough water to kind of disrupt that have come in. Hopefully in the long run this will be good for Lake Mead. We know lake levels have been a serious concern.
Well, we've talked about that before
now
on this podcast, and that might potentially be the silver lining. I'm hoping that the rainfall falls in a spot where it's in the Lake Mead catchment area.
Right, and I do too, but then you know there's going to be flooding, so anybody that keeps up with Las Vegas media knows that like the parking garage at the Link is going to flood with the slightest amount of rain. And you and I live in a community, like, we're technically in the sub-desert, not the desert. But we don't get, like, we get like 3/4 of an inch too much to technically be a desert, but we basically are. And
if it walks like a desert and quacks like a desert.
Yes. So we know that our city planners did goofy things like paved dry riverbeds so that we have a street that we lovingly refer to as the Rio Wadley, because anytime
the local brewery makes a beer called the Rio Wadley.
If we get more than 2 inches of rain, that street that pretty much divides North Midland from South Midland becomes impassable, and there will be stalled out vehicles and people in canoes having fun with it. And I rather suspect that Las Vegas may suffer from some very similar problems, because I think most listeners that are from other places might think that when you live somewhere dry, you're thankful for the rain. And that's true, but when your environment is not built to handle rain, a large rain event can become a catastrophe pretty quickly.
Let's say it's 1930 odd and you're a mobster sitting in Las Vegas, innocently minding your own business, planning out a new city. On the list of risks you're concerned about are other mobsters, government agents, maybe heat, maybe rattlesnakes, I don't know, things like that. But hurricanes and heavy rainfall just isn't one of the things you're going to be planning for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I'm going to give the Las Vegas city planners a pass on that one. So
Absolutely.
Everybody in Las Vegas, we hope you are healthy and safe and well. We will be there in 2 weeks. It looks like the worst of this rain, based on what the weather forecast is saying right now, is going to miss the city of Las Vegas. We hope everybody is okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And not just in Vegas, but in all of the areas affected. We know that I'm mostly worried for residents of the Baja Peninsula in Mexico. You know way more about Mexico's infrastructure and politics than I do, having represented our government down there. But between governmental issues and the cartels, I don't think they're really well set up for a disaster.
So, shockingly, Mexican disaster response services are pretty good, particularly in a case like this where it's well-known, well-publicized. You've got a couple of days to get ready. I was there, it's been pushing 20 years ago when Hurricane Wilma hit, and the official response was pretty good, right? Like, it was certainly not worse than, say, what happened in New Orleans in 2004.
Yeah, it's hard to be worse than that. And then you do have to wonder, too, with Southern California, whether you're going to see the landslides. A lot of people have built homes along the hillsides, which sounds like a really good idea when you're just trying to see the scenery in Southern California. But I imagine it's not such a good idea when the hill your lovely home is built on starts to give way.
Well, speaking of giant natural disasters, let's talk about the Oakland A's baseball team, which may or may not be moving to Las Vegas, and I still think they probably are. But one of the problems is now that they've acquired a few $100 million in financing from the state of Nevada, they've still got to come up with something like $1 billion in private financing. The A's are now talking to Goldman Sachs about that, but here's the problem. If you're talking to Goldman Sachs, that's because you couldn't get financing from the larger regular banks. So they
because you're Congress.
Fair enough. But no, they it looks like they're struggling to, at the very least, get an optimal financing package. We still don't have the final vote from Major League Baseball, so I still expect this to happen. But there keep being these weird hiccups, and this strikes me as the sort of thing they should have had lined up before they ever made all the big splashy announcements.
Yeah, and I feel like the A's ownership is bending over backwards to prove that they are the worst ownership group in the American League West, which is a Rangers fan, I find to be a tremendous accomplishment.
So as a fan of Texas A&M, as a proud graduate of Texas A&M, I would say that the A's can never be the worst ownership group in sports. Whoever gave Jimbo Fisher that contract extension has got to be the worst at making major sports decisions. But after that, sure, you've got a point.
Or then there's a Skip Bayless saying of the Browns when they took your beloved Johnny Football, speaking of Aggies, saying that good old Johnny would make a bigger impact on Cleveland sports than LeBron James. So Skip Bayless,
that was a swing and a miss.
Skip Bayless, in the odd event that you ever listen to this podcast, you're an idiot. Anyway.
So what else is going on in Vegas, John?
So Martin Yan, of one of the OG celebrity chefs, we're talking back.
Is he the guy from Yan Can Cook?
Yes, back in the 80s on PBS when you would watch him with Justin Wilson and all of that. He opened up MY Asia at the Horseshoe back in March. Now, I did a little reading on this, and like many of our news stories, this is coming straight from Vital Vegas. A lot of times when you see a celebrity restaurant at a Caesars property, it's a licensing deal. And it's not really like the celebrity chef has a hand in forming the menu and all of that, but the day-to-day operations are run by Caesar's culinary team with some input from the celebrity chef. And then the celebrity chef shows up for photo ops and that kind of thing and make sure the branding's right. But the day-to-day is run by Caesar's, not by the chef, which also means Caesar's has a vested interest in making sure the venue is successful and sustaining it through that awkward launch phase, because restaurants don't tend to be profitable in their first year. Well, Mr. Yan did not have one of those deals. His restaurant was run by his own organization with its own financing, and they were essentially a tenant at the Horseshoe. They paid for the renovation out of pocket to turn what had been a tequila and taco joint into an Asian joint. and they just flat ran out of money. They didn't have the capital to sustain them through that time period that it takes. So now they've closed. Now, I didn't get this.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I think I can tell you one reason why it may have closed, because the Horseshoe is in a prime location and it's a big, busy hotel. But I stayed in the Horseshoe back in May. I had no idea that restaurant was even there.
Yeah.
Which means it must have been buried in some horrible location somewhere, because I walked around the hotel for 2 days. I never saw it.
Yeah, and that may be a bit of a problem. I also think, too, that some of the food reviews were generously, let's say, mixed. And I can't help but wonder, Caesars being Caesars, if they don't think, hey, neat, we've already got an Asian restaurant built out, and now we can run it without having to pay a celebrity chef a cut. Or maybe they find some other celebrity chef to slap a name on and keep going. But at any rate, if you were a fan of PBS cooking shows back in the day and you were looking forward to seeing if Yan, in fact, can cook, you've missed your shot. And I'm one of those people. I did want to try this place, and now not so much.
Well, the good news is, though, if you were looking forward to eating that place, you probably couldn't have gotten to it anyway, because with Formula One coming up in November, it looks to me like it's going to be increasingly hard to get across the Strip, up and down the Strip, to do any sort of travel involving most of the Las Vegas Strip. Now, obviously, we'll be able to give listeners a better report when we're there in 2 weeks for Labor Day. But what are you hearing about the status of Formula One construction, preparation, tickets, all of that complex of issues?
So in terms of getting around the city, I was listening to the Vegas 360 podcast, and they just did their Vegas vacation event, which they host once a year because they have an audience and they can do this. And God bless them. Someday maybe we'll have an audience and we could do events in Vegas too. But one of the things they ran into was one member of that podcast, Tony, was staying at the Cosmopolitan. They were going to have an event at a spot at the Palazzo. Ordinarily, you can get an Uber to get from Cosmo to Palazzo, no sweat. Uber never showed up. Finally dumped out. He jumped in a cab. Took him half an hour. So even just getting basically across the street, to get car traffic from one side to the other is difficult. So if you're going to Vegas between now and Formula One, and you want to go to something that, if you're on, let's say you're on the Bellagio side of the Strip and the thing you want to go to is on the opposite side of the Strip, you might be better off walking or utilizing the trams to get closer to your destination and then walking, because getting across on the pedestrian walkways is going to be way more efficient.
And to be clear, traffic. Those pedestrian walkways are still open, right?
Yes. Yeah. Now, there was a Turn It Up World live broadcast yesterday that the escalators were down because of the rain, because the escalators break all the time if anybody looks at them sideways. But since I don't do escalators, long story, we're not getting into it now. That doesn't really affect me.
You don't do escalators, John?
I pass out on escalators. I don't know why. If I stay, even it's not going up. Even a moving sidewalk like at the airport, something about that vibration makes me start to black out. I don't understand it. It's weird. My doctors think it's an inner ear issue.
And the good news is, though, right? Like when all of your friends are in Vegas taking those escalators, they are A, deeply emotionally supportive, and B, you've never gotten lost trying to find them.
Yeah, so that's a whole other story that we're not going to tell today. But
listeners, if you want to hear this, apparently this is the time when I'm supposed to stop.
Yeah, no, and maybe someday if we develop a Patreon and we have those paywall only episodes, we'll save it for that. But let's not, because I'd rather there's parts of that story that I don't want my children to ever hear. I'm not proud of that particular morning of my life. I'll just leave it at this: if you have made the decision to fill your suite up with a bar for your trip and then discovered that you didn't, the 4 people on your party could not possibly drain the 7 bottles of alcohol that you had out because you were getting drinks other places, do not try to polish off a 5th of whiskey in a 30-minute window and then walk to the Wynn Buffet, because the day can go sideways in a hurry. And that's as much of that story as we are telling today and possibly ever on this podcast.
I had a lovely morning.
Yes, and I had a morning. So, speaking of F1, so if you're getting around Vegas now, apparently, if you're planning a trip between now and Formula One, you probably want to think very carefully about your dining and activity choices and how you're going to get from A to B. And if you can keep things in walking distance, or, if you're going to be using rides, just playing extra time, that sort of thing.
So, and I'm actually glad we're having this conversation, because for the trip that we're making in Labor Day, that day before you get there, me and the guys who are already going to be there, we're planning to get in a car and go considerably up the strip. And I'm pretty sure now that's not going to happen. I think the buffet just moved from, so we're staying at the Delano, the buffet just moved from Caesars all the way south to the Wicked Spoon, because that's a place that's a lot more comfortable to get to on foot.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good call. And I might try to renegotiate that, because I would gladly go to Wicked Spoon if y'all could do that when I'm there. But if not, I'm good with that. Before we jump off of F1, I will say a story broke out, and I actually caught this from a few places. Vital Vegas had it. Jacob's Life in Vegas also had it. Ellis Island is now selling packages for Formula One. They're selling their grandstand seats for $1,500. Now, according to Vital Vegas, that's the cut Formula One is demanding from properties to sell tickets. So apparently Ellis Island is selling seats in the grandstands at their cost, which is a heck of a move.
How can Formula One demand money from a private property owner for using their own private property?
So apparently Formula One has the ability, when they're in the parts of the area that they do control by their contracts, they can use floodlights to prevent anybody from sitting on your property of having a clear view of the cars going by. So if you want to set up bleachers with a view of Formula One and not have Formula One take whatever legal means they have to obstruct your view, you got to pay the piper.
That, I have thoughts, but they're not all family-friendly thoughts right now. So cool.
Yeah, I agree. But it looks like Ellis Island is trying to make this as affordable as they can, and they've got 3-night room packages for $5,000. And I have 500 on the run sheet, but it's $5,000, and that includes your ability to see the race. But it's kind of an interesting move. So from a baller on a budget perspective, if I were interested in Formula One, it sounds like Ellis Island would be the best deal, because $5,000 is not cheap at all. Yeah. But when you start looking at the Formula One packages at other places, that's as good a deal as you're going to get.
Well, and I've been trying to get you to go to Ellis Island for years, and you always come up with reasons about why we shouldn't.
I think that's backwards, and I still want to go hang out at Ellis Island. I don't know that it's a place I necessarily want to stay, but I do want to go gamble a little there. Some of the dining there is supposed to be really good, especially for the price. But part of the debate online is, Ellis Island is sort of a bargain property, and it's nice that they're trying to be the most affordable Formula One thing, but some commenters are worried about whether or not your typical Ellis Island customer can swing that, and most of them probably can't. But still, it's nice to know that if you're trying to do F1 on some kind of budget, there's a property trying to make that happen. And I still insist that we need to go kick it. Maybe not stay there, but I think we need to go check out Ellis Island. It's got affordable blackjack at good odds. It's got good slot play. It's got good restaurants. We need to check this joint out.
I think that is excellent. Well, John, is there any more news before we move on and give the preview of the guys' football trip that we're going to take in a couple of weeks?
So speaking of things people who grew up in the 90s always want to check out, Shania Twain is coming to Vegas.
Bada boom.
She'll be showing up late next spring, I believe, starting in May at the Backed Theater. I believe that used to be the Zappos Theater at the Miracle Mile Shops at Planet Hollywood. I believe this is where Gwen Stefani, speaking of my 90s crushes, also had done her residency. It appears that Planet Hollywood Miracle Mile is trying to corner the market on Gen Xers trying to relive their youth and see how well their celebrity crushes have aged. And by the way, Miss Twain has aged remarkably well.
Not as well as Jerry Ryan.
No, nobody's aged as well as Jerry Ryan. But Shania, she still feels like a woman, and we applaud that. Would you, if the price was right, is that a show you would go catch in Vegas?
So it would depend on who I was with. If it was one of those trips where I was by myself, it would feel super sad. And if I was there with just like one buddy, I could see that getting awkward. If I'm there with a group of guys, I don't know. That might get sad again, because if you're all a bunch of like 48, 50-year-old men who are like, yay, you were hot when we were young and still couldn't do anything about it. I don't know, right? Like it's
You don't think,
maybe?
You don't think our group could just lock elbows and sing "So Glad We Made It" together? Look how far we've come. Like
I think there are a couple of our friends who would start singing "Man, I Feel Like a Woman," and we could get any amount of money we wanted the next day for not selling that video, because of course there would be video.
I actually think this would be great, and I support this as a plan for a future guys trip. I think we need to do it. Absolutely, it's the kind of show I would go see with my wife, because that would be a couples thing. But yeah, I am not too embarrassed to be with a bunch of dudes that want to look. Women do this all the time. Middle-aged women will still go see Backstreet Boys.
Yes, okay. You know what? I can't control what that group of people does. I can control what I do, and I go to the bar for one more cocktail. That's what I do.
And they'll have a bar at the back theater. All right, okay, anyway. So that's really, there's a lot more news, but I was lazy this week, so those are the news stories I bothered to collect. So let's move on. So listeners, we try to record every 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now, we will be in Labor Day. If we're functional, we may try to record live, maybe even do a YouTube live while we're in Vegas. Sometimes the way our trips go, that may or may not be advisable, but the next time you hear from us, we will either be in Vegas on this trip or we'll be debriefing the trip afterwards. So, Bill, let's kind of give the listeners a preview of what we've got on deck and some of the experiences we have planned.
So, the Labor Day trip began as a celebration trip for some job-related good news and has expanded into a pretty major football trip. It is the first weekend of the college football season, and we always find one of us always gets a nice big suite where there's plenty of space for us to gather and watch football games, because nobody wants to spend 6 hours down in the sports book paying casino bar prices and all that. And we get a nice room. So what we're doing on this trip is staying at the Delano, which is probably about the best location in Las Vegas for a guy's football trip, because they're basic rooms. And I stayed one of these in July. I've got video up of it on Dine Drink Vegas on our YouTube channel. But the Delano, even the most basic room, is a 2-room suite with, and this is what's really critical, 1.5 bathrooms. So if the guys are coming over to watch a football game, they don't have to get into your bathroom, into your room, into your business. There's plenty of places for them to be. The other thing is the Delano is physically connected to the Mandalay Bay, and that's where the walkway is over to the Raider Stadium, over to Allegiant Stadium. Now, there's no games that we want to see this time. I think the only game being played while we're there is UNLV against the University of Central Nowhere. I'm not even sure who they're playing.
Yeah, although if the tickets are cheap enough, I don't know, I wouldn't be opposed to that, but I probably get in late enough on Friday where I don't want to do that. The other nice thing about the Mandalay Bay complex is you have a number of room options at different price points. So in the last episode, you talked about not only Delano, but the Four Seasons. So you really do have some upscale. And you made the statement last episode that the Delano is one of the more affordable rooms in the MGM portfolio. I want to correct you a little bit. It's one of the more affordable luxury rooms in the MGM portfolio.
Fair.
But you do have 2 nicer upscale properties. The Mandalay rooms themselves, I would call moderate upscale. Not high-end luxury, but extremely nice and well above average in the MGM portfolio. But it's also very easy to walk in the air-conditioned Skybridge or take the tram, but really you might as well walk it to stay over at Luxor. And if you've really got a budget, you could stay at Excalibur, which again has another walkway. So you've got 4, if you count Excalibur, I don't want to, but if you count the Dirty Castle, 4 to 5 hotel options with easy access to that compound. So when you're traveling with a group of guys all living in different tax brackets with different economic pressures, it's a nice way to go, because like for me, I've had a very expensive summer. Some things came up. One of my kids broke a tooth, so we've been paying for dental bills. So I'll be staying over at Luxor because that's going to save me, I want to say something like $85 a night versus Mandalay, and about $120 a night versus the Delano.
And depending on where you are in the Luxor, though, getting from your room to the Luxor over to my room at the Delano isn't going to take 5 minutes, right? Like it's still... you're describing a walk that's not that different from different towers within the Caesars complex.
Exactly. Now,
Right.
I wouldn't do... Now, I'm glad you said towers. I would not try to do the towers at Luxor if I had friends over at Mandalay. I think this is a case where you want to be in the pyramid. I have requested a second floor room, so it's easier to get to the walkway, and I don't want to ride that inclinator up because those are the jankiest elevators in all of Las Vegas.
I kind of want to do it though, just to see what it's like and see if I live through the experience.
Well, I'm sure we will, but yeah, I like the way this plays out because I know we've got another buddy on the trip that he's always worried about wanting a budget room, and I do like that you don't feel like. And again, I like to call myself the baller on a budget. The baller part matters too. I don't want to stay at some place just because it's cheap. I want it to be nice. I want it to connect to amenities I care about. I want to be able to get to the nicer things in Vegas. I don't spend a lot. So
you never say stay at a place where the toilet's right in the middle of the bar.
Yeah, again, and you are wrong about that. And the suites at the Golden Gate are one of the best deals in Vegas, and I will die on that hill. And yeah,
and you've got the poop and pour right there in the room.
It is not a poop and pour. Your memory of how that room is laid out is it correct? Now,
my memory of everything which happens in Vegas is flawless because I drink water and eat salad, and that's all I do the whole trip.
By the way, listeners, you should never try to demonstrate martial arts on a marble floor while wearing socks. And I don't know that from firsthand experience.
When I demonstrated martial arts in socks on a marble floor is I didn't get lost.
Okay, fair. So I got lost, so I couldn't find the strip in Vegas. Fine. I couldn't find the strip when I was a block away from it.
No,
Fine.
You started on the strip.
Yes.
Okay, cool. So anyway, the other great thing though is, so obviously we'll have some cocktails and obviously we're going to gamble. But everybody in our group is in a very different place right now than we were a quarter century ago when John and I were describing the times that New Orleans tried to eat us, right? Like that was 25 years ago. We are making different choices now. And to me, I think the real key of these trips is the delicious things we eat. So the first night, and John won't be there yet, but I'm going back to my old friend Le Cirque, which I probably haven't been to in 2 years because it's, well, whatever, it's expensive, right? Like it is hard to afford if you work for a living.
It is so good though.
Oh gosh, it is good. And the waitstaff is just beautiful. And the like the cognac, whatever, everything about Le Cirque is good. When I go to Vegas, I do almost nothing if it's not going to give me video footage for the channel. Here it's not going to get me any footage that I don't already have. And it's one of those places where I actually wouldn't disrespect the other diners to interrupt their meal. I'm just going to go and sit and have a top flight meal and enjoy every minute of it and hope that everybody in the group actually has pants. A couple of nights later, what we're going to do when everyone in the group is there is do what is probably the exact opposite of Le Cirque, and we're going to go to Hofbrau House. Hofbrau House is a German place, which is actually it's a nice meal, and they've done a good job of, in the way Vegas does, making it feel like a fake Bavaria. But the beer is good, the food is good, and they've got a deal where you can buy your buddies a shot, and they'll bring him a shot, and then part of the package is that a large burly woman comes up and paddles your buddy, while of course all of his emotionally supportive friends who are fully adults video it to send around to everyone else in the friend group. Actually, John, we've never bought you a shot at Hofbrau House, have we?
I've never been to Hofbrau House, and I don't like the way you describe the waitresses because I like to imagine that every German woman looks exactly like Terry Garr in Young Frankenstein.
We will make sure you have an unforgettable experience at a Hofbrau House.
But you're making it sound like they all look like Frau Farbrucke. Anyway,
no, just the ones with the paddles.
Yeah, okay. Another meal that we've got on the docket is Libertine Social, and this is one that you're accommodating to me because I've been wanting to try this place for a while. The decor on the outside is funky and bohemian and weird. It is a protein-heavy menu, so it's not your typical steakhouse, but they definitely have steaks that are supposed to be really good. Right in the heart of the Mandalay Bay, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I believe that's our Sunday night.
Yes. Libertine Social is the Sunday night because by that point we're all going to be tired. Nobody's going to want to leave the hotel complex. And I'm actually going on their website right now because I want to see what it is I'm going to eat. Listeners, you get to menu surf with me for just a second. Oh my goodness. The first thing I saw was a picture of a 10-ounce Wagyu skirt steak. So folks, a skirt steak is the cut that they make fajitas from. So it's one of the cheaper cuts of steak, but I actually enjoy the way that it eats. I enjoy the texture of a skirt steak, and when it's presented as a steak rather than sliced up into fajitas. And a Wagyu skirt steak is a really, relatively speaking, affordable way to enjoy an upscale cut like Wagyu.
Yes.
Like that can be good. Let me go into their menu and see how much that costs, because I think I may have a plan for my dinner that night. Hold on just a second. This shouldn't be that hard. And sorry, John, we're menu surfing for a second. You're along for the ride.
And this is why we're not professional broadcasters.
It's fine. And I'm too dumb. Right. So, yeah, the Wagyu skirt steak's just $62, which, as a nice steak in Vegas goes, is a pretty good deal. Oh my goodness. They've got what looks like, when they say a CSF bone-in ribeye, are they chicken frying a ribeye with the bone still in it?
I believe that is the thing that they are doing, yes.
That would A, kill me, and B, might be worth it. I am excited about this meal, and I owe you an apology, John. I am very sorry that we have not gone there before, because you're correct. This is one of those places you've been advocating for years now. And I was always like, no, and whatever. You were right and I was wrong. I reserve the right to revise my opinion based on what the actual meal is like. But yeah, that looks fantastic.
Well, yeah, I mean, once we eat it, we may decide it, sometimes in Vegas you get disappointed by a dining experience, but just the reviews I've come across have been good. I really like the vibe they put down. I just like the idea, this kind of Renaissance theme that they have going on. The cocktail program is supposed to be outstanding. Some of the side dishes look really good. The black truffle potato puree. Yes,
John, a question from the fat kid in the back. What is the difference between a cocktail program and a drink from the bar?
So it is very trendy on people inside the industry to refer to the bar, the approach to running the bar, as the cocktail program.
Are these the same kind of people who take a perfectly good margarita and call it a marg?
No. They are definitely not the people who are doing that. No. But they are the people that are making that margarita as delicious as possible. And generally speaking, when you go to a bar that uses a phrase, cocktail program, you are probably going to pay a premium for the drinks you get. And that can be a downer. But you're also probably going to get your drink made with some very high quality spirits. And that a lot of times, like what you get versus, a typical bar menu and somebody that's really thought through the mixology of a cocktail program, a Paloma or a margarita, you've got your tequila, you've got some kind of sweetener, you've got a citrus component, you've got a citrus flavored liqueur, but thinking about how the ingredients complement them, not all triple sec or carousels taste good with all tequilas, and you want a program that's really thought about not just the basic recipe, 2 parts this to 1 part that, but thinking about how the exact brandings they're picking play in. They tend to be the bars that offer some customer sizability. I can't talk today. So that they'll have a selection of spirits. So if you would like to change up what they're doing because you prefer a particular spirit, the odds are they're going to have it. It's very different than, say, going and getting a Presidente margarita from your local Chili's, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But if you want that elevated drink experience, that tends to be the lingo you hear, our cocktail program.
So one other thing I'm looking forward to on this trip, beyond just, the bars and the restaurants, you've sold me on pool days as being a thing to enjoy in Las Vegas. I've had on the website, I just had an article published last night about the 3 different pool complexes within the Mandalay Bay pool complex. But it can be a fun Saturday afternoon to just float down their lazy river in an inner tube, with a margarita or a beer, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a good day.
Now, I did some legwork on that. So if you're staying at Luxor, once upon a time, Luxor guests had full run of the Mandalay pool. They have now changed those rules so that if you're not staying inside the walls of Mandalay, now you could be at Mandalay, Delano, or Four Seasons, but if you're inside Mandalay proper, you have full run of the pool complex. But if you're staying at another, even if it's an MGM property, they still want you to rent a day bed or a cabana to access their pool. And that may be a byproduct of during the pandemic, they were a little more liberal about that because they didn't have the volume of guests, and now they have to start thinking about limits. However, if you have a buddy that is one to a room, they can add you to their room reservation at Mandalay, and you are legitimately, and they probably don't check. You flash a key, they let you in. But were they to check, you can add your name to a reservation of your buddy's room at Mandalay. Even if you're staying on another property, nobody cares as long as you're within the room allowance. So if you're thinking about doing this and you're remembering back to the pandemic days when Coolio, as long as I'm staying somewhere at MGM, they're going to let me into Mandalay Pool. I did check. That is no longer the case.
Somehow I'm not concerned with our ability for all of us completely within the rules and, like you said, the room allowances to get you into the pool.
Oh, yeah. No, well, that's a solvable problem. I just want listeners who may have been thinking like I did during the pandemic when they lacked some of these rules. Yeah, not so much anymore.
One of the things I'm disappointed about on this trip is every time I go to Vegas, I like to find a nice cigar bar at some point, and there's really not one down at the Mandalay Bay. Now, they have a Davidoff cigar store. You can take a cigar from there, 100 feet over, not even that far, to the Rhythm and Riffs bar and smoke it. So they've got a facility, but I do wish they had a proper cigar bar somewhere there on the South Las Vegas Strip. I think that'd be a nice part of a guy's football trip to Vegas.
Yeah, I agree. That would be a good thing to see them at, although smoking rules are pretty lax throughout the casino. So finding a place where you can light up your cigar and get a beverage is not hard to do. I mean, even in New York, they have little cigar kiosks that have proper humidors. Selection's limited, but you can do that. So, but yeah, there's something about, and again, going back to the idea of thinking through the cocktail selection, some of the cigar bars do an excellent job of really thinking through how the rum or bourbons they use in a particular cocktail complement the cigars they tend to sell. Like Davidoffs tend to be lighter bodied cigars as opposed to, like a Crowned Heads or something like that. And knowing that your tobacconist has worked with the bartender to come up with complementary flavors, that's great. With an arrangement like this where you're buying from the store and then you're on your own to find a bar to smoke in, you're not going to get that degree of detail. But, I do appreciate that at least it's a good cigar store.
Yeah, no, that'll be nice. So before we wrap up, John, are there any other highlights on this trip that you're looking forward to?
I am a huge fan of brunch, and it looks like unless we rearrange some meals, I probably do miss the buffet on this trip, which is okay because of our group, I'm probably the least big fan of buffets, although I do love the really high-end buffets in Vegas. But we have brunches booked at the moment. Now, of course, we're going to do a breakfast at Reraw at some point this trip because Reraw is delightful.
And we're civilized people.
Right. It's an Irish pub. Great Irish beer selection. By the way, get the Murphy Stout instead of Guinness. I love Guinness, but Murphy's is better. But we are doing on Saturday brunch at Border Grill, which again, celebrity chefs in the early days of Food Network, they had two women who ran a show called Two Hot Tamales. Border Grill is their restaurant. It's considered a staple in the Vegas dining scene. Their weekend brunch is supposed to be amazing. So we're looking forward to that. And then Lago by Julian Serrano over at Bellagio. We're going to do that for Sunday morning brunch. Sunday morning brunch is the highlight of these Labor Day trips. So I'm definitely looking forward to that as well.
No, I think that ought to be a great trip. I hope we're able to do a YouTube live or something like that during the trip. And we will certainly come back afterwards and tell everybody what the construction is like as they get ready for Formula One.
Well, I think that about wraps up this episode. So, Bill, I'm going to give you a chance to tell everybody what platforms they could find at Dine Drink Vegas or at Dine Drink Travel at.
You can find us on Dine Drink Vegas on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram and on whatever Twitter is calling itself now.
Yeah, and do we have a thread yet?
We do. I did it like twice.
Yeah, so we're not really keeping up with that. I'm also at Dine Drink John on Twitter, although I've been really bad about Twitter because work has been busy, but we will try to monitor those a little bit more. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you check out our Facebook videos. They are fun, informative, and blissfully short videos to tell you exactly what you need to know about the venue that we are exploring. We never make you watch us eat because you don't want to see fat guys chewing on camera. It's all about Vegas and not about us. You're welcome. With that said, thank you for listening. We can't wait to talk to you again. And as always, happy travels.
Happy travels, y'all.